All right, hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. This is an educational channel, and we look at great uh, theories, concepts, and discoveries that are very impactful, but that you probably haven't heard about because they've been suppressed. Things that they've tried to do a little sleight of hand with you and pass it off without you finding out about it, or just outright omitting it from your purview. And today is another Bible Decode. This one is number 288. And today we're starting with a new book, which is an old book. And not as old as the Bible, obviously. But this is a book from Bronson Keeler called History of the Bible, a popular account of the formation and development of the canon. And I was emphasizing this last time. I'm sorry I was unable to make a video yesterday. I think I've been mentioning that I've been having some family health issues with members of my family that have kind of taken a little bit of a toll. And I didn't really have time to make one yesterday. So sorry about that, but I'll try to be consistent, but you probably can expect that I'm going to miss a day every once in a while. Now, what I was mentioning is just that, a lot of Christians and maybe even other religions as well, they, um, when you say you want to do a deep dive on the Bible, and you want to really understand the Bible, well, then you go to the Bible and you start reading it. I would recommend that, um, you know, uh, it's fine. That's fine, you know. But I think another approach that can also be very fruitful is to um, kind of try to figure out what you're reading. What is the Bible? Where did it come from? What is its history? Who wrote it? When did they write it? And even what language did they write it in? A lot of Christians don't even know that the New Testament is, the Old Testament is written in Hebrew and the New Testament is written in Greek. These are, why is the New Testament written in Greek? They didn't speak Greek over there in Judea very much, did they? Not very much. Um, so how did that transpire? I'm not saying I know, but I'm just saying that it's a question that it's a red flag uh, in my mind. And, so when you kind of take a look at the Bible and you kind of understand, you know, what's at stake here, who's writing this, and why are they writing it, and who are they writing it to? These kind of questions, um, and that why is this? Why are the books organized in this order? And why are the books? Why are these the books? These are questions that a lot of people don't ask, and I think that they would give you a lot more context so that you could really understand what you were reading once you started reading it. I know when I first started reading, first read the Bible when I was in high school, um, even though I didn't understand anything. And really the only reason I was reading it is because I didn't want to go to hell. I figured that if I read the Bible, that might help me not go to hell or something. Um, and I think that a lot of Christians do it that way too. And then a lot of Christians also they don't read the Bible. They just have a pat set of 200 or so Bible verses that they will cite for every different situation. And so they're just kind of cherry picking verses from the Bible, but they don't see it as a whole. They don't see the whole picture of what is this whole thing? And they conveniently ignore many passages that might actually even be embarrassing for them to even be in there. Now, you probably, if you've been watching, you know that I've been kind of focusing on the Roman origins hypothesis for the New Testament, and also, the ins and outs of the Dead Sea Scrolls. We may end up, talking about those things as a kind of a background to this particular work, but we're going to just try to take this as it is. It's a pretty short book, and there's some very interesting information about kind of the very early period from second century, up until the 4th or 5th century, about how did the Bible get to be the way it was. And this focuses on primarily the New Testament, but there's some stuff in here on the Old Testament as well. Okay, this book was written way back in 1881, and for me, I prefer reading these older books, 19th century books, early 20th century books. I find that there's kind of less propaganda, the propaganda is less sophisticated, so you can kind of see through it a little bit more easily. But anyway, this author's name is Bronson Keeler, and this is published by C.P. Farrell from New York, and again, a popular account of the formation and development of the canon. And he's got a preface here, which we will start with. The fact that no American writer has undertaken to give an account of the formation of the canon of the Bible has left an unoccupied place in religious literature, which the following pages aim in an elementary way to fill. The main purpose of this book is found in the 8th chapter, and the preceding chapters were added only as the proper presentation of the subject seemed to require them. A popular work must be brief, for life is too short. And he probably wouldn't, he'd probably be rolling over in his grave if he realized how brief popular works have become. Where you have TikTok videos that max out at 60 seconds. You got to get your point in 60 seconds. Back in 1881, people had an attention span. People were able to sit down and focus on something because they didn't have 5,000 other things vying for their attention. But even at this time, it was getting to be more modern, and people had more distractions than they did, say, 100 years earlier or 500 years earlier. So a popular work must be brief, for life is too short, and in these days too full of other duties, to allow much time for the pursuit of special subjects, particularly those which a separate class is supposed to be already exhaustively investigating and fairly reporting. Brevity, therefore, has been kept in view, and yet the author believes he has substantially covered the entire ground, insofar as a general outline can do it. A few councils whose lists, like that of Ephesus, were merely repetitions of preceding lists, and a few bishops and others whose opinions offer nothing worthy of special notice have been passed over in silence. But it is believed that the essential elements in the formation of the canon have been included. An outline alone, though a complete one, has been attempted, and not all has been said of each bishop and each council that might have been stated. Only the substance of each bishop's views or of each council's decree being given. Okay, and that's the end of the preface. which he wrote from Chicago in 1881. And scrolling through, we get to the table of contents, and he spoke about the 8th chapter. That's kind of the centerpiece of this book. We'll just go through the chapters. First, introductory. Second, the Hebrew canon. Third, the New Testament, the early controversies. Fourth, the books at first not considered inspired. Fifth, were the fathers competent? Sixth, the fathers quoted as scripture books, which are now called apocryphal. And seventh, the heretics. Chapter 8 is called the Christian canon. And I guess that's the final chapter. He quotes John Milton, who says, the greatest burden in the world is superstition. And he also quotes Archbishop Trench, who says, credulity is as real, if not as great a sin, as unbelief. Okay, chapter 1. Purpose of this book, purpose of the book. This is an inquiry into the origin and development of the doctrine of divine revelation, beginning with a time when the books composing the Bible were not considered inspired, and following the belief in the light of history and approved scholarship from its inception to the present day. In the course of the investigation, it will be in order to show who first affirmed the books to be inspired, why they so affirmed, and the intellectual character of the affirmants, who, so far as is known, compiled them into the volume now denominated the Bible. What books are now included in the Bible which in earlier days were excluded, and what are now excluded which were then included? What councils of the church voted on the canonical list? What books they voted in and what they voted out, and where the theory originated that we must believe the Bible or be damned. Inviting the reader to share the inquiry, I wish to assure him that I have no theory to advocate. In opposing what I believe to be error, I desire simply to offer evidence which is easily accessible to most, which seems not to have had its due prominence in theological discussion among the masses, and which, if properly appreciated, must result in great changes in religious belief. And then he starts here with the authorities. The writings of the Christian fathers, the ecclesiastical history of Eusebius, the oldest Christian history now extant, and the modern works, which includes On the Canon of the New Testament by Brooke Foss Westcott, and The Canon of the Bible by Professor Samuel Davidson, are the sources from which the information must be chiefly drawn. So those probably are much longer works that go into this matter in a lot more detail. And he's kind of distilling a lot of that stuff here, I believe. He's got a very long footnote here that just kind of refers to how he is, what his method of footnoting is. Okay, now I'm having some technical difficulty trying to, okay, here we go. The statements quoted from Professor Davidson will appear to the general reader quite remarkable. A word or two in explanation may be necessary. Davidson is an Englishman in the recognized head and front of the Protestant students of the world. He is 83 years of age, has spent a life in the study of these topics, is one of the ablest, if not the ablest, authority now living on the subject of the canon, and is the author of the the ecclesiastical polity of the New Testament, an introduction to the New Testament in 3 volumes, and Bible criticism in 2 volumes, sacred hermeneutics developed and applied, translation of Geisler's Compendium of Ecclesiastical History in 4 volumes, text of the Old Testament considered, and the canon of the Bible, besides a great number of articles in biblical and ecclesiastical dictionaries. He was requested by the editors of the new edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica to write the article on the canon for that work, and accepted the commission, supposing that what they desired was the facts. He told how the Bible had been made up, what books had been put in at different times and what left out, and that the Bible had not always consisted of just the books now in it. When the editors read the article, they declined to publish it as it was. They mutilated it, quote, mutilated it, as Professor Davidson says. And what was left after the eliminating process was completed now appears in the encyclopedia as the article on the canon. Professor Davidson then published the original in book form, entitling it The Canon of the Bible, and in the preface he tells why he issued it. It is from that work that I quote so frequently. The inexperienced person has little idea of the difficulty which the critical party finds in getting its facts before the public, nor of the systematic suppression used by the Christian press and clergy to prevent unpleasant truths concerning the Christian religion from coming out. There is not an Orthodox religious newspaper in the world that will publish the facts concerning the origin of the Bible, which are given in these pages. There is scarcely a magazine in America that will publish them, and it is but recently that any newspaper would do so. Men who know the Christian theology to be untrue have to get their audience as best they can. Furthermore, strange as it may seem, Professor Davidson's book was the first in English on the canon of the entire Bible, worthy the attention of the student. Now, his footnote basically just says, by canon is meant the list of the books composing the Bible. Among the early Christians, it meant the list of the books appointed to be read in the churches, and later it came to mean the list of books which were the sources and best doctrines. In the early centuries, it was opposed to the word apocryphal, which last had no injurious sense, meaning simply books which were not to be read in public, but only in private, and were to be kept secret. Its present idea of spurious began in a modified form with Clement of Alexandria and Origen, but that's all 3rd century, early 3rd century, but received its distinctive character only after the Reformation of the early 16th century. Okay, Dr. Westcott's was the first on the New Testament canon worthy of the same attention, and both these have been published within the past quarter century. One would suppose that the Christian clergy would be familiar with the history of the Bible and how it came to be compiled, but the truth is, it is one of the subjects least understood. The Church has shown a persistency amounting almost to a method in educating the world in the wrong things. We have been carefully informed concerning the 40 little children and the 2 she-bears, Jonah and the whale, and Daniel in the lion's den, and have been as carefully kept in ignorance concerning the things which utterly overwhelm the Christian theology. Okay, this section is called Origin of the Books. The reader must bear in mind that most of the books of the Bible are anonymous. No one knows who wrote them, and no one knows when they were written. Who wrote the book of Judges, the 2 books of Kings, or the 2 books of Chronicles? As to their origin, there have been conjectures, but the number of authors named is about equal to the number of commentators engaged in the guessing. The books in the Old Testament whose authors are unknown or disputed are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles. And then, so that's whatever the first 14 books there. And then apparently Ezra and Nehemiah are not disputed. But then we go to Esther and Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Daniel. So apparently we know Isaiah and Jeremiah. Ezekiel, Daniel, Obadiah. So we know some of the minor prophets here. Amos and Hosea and Joel. And then, but we don't know Obadiah, Jonah, Habakkuk, Haggai. So he says 26 from 39 books. The time was, of course, when the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, was thought to have been written by Moses, but no theologian whose opinion is entitled for a moment to any respect now says so. Bishop Colenso has written a work proving that it was not of Mosaic authorship, but an examination of this entire question is much more readily pursued than by consulting him. The reader knows of Dr. Smith's Dictionary of the Bible and McClintock and Strong's Cyclopedia of Biblical, Theological, and Ecclesiastical Literature. They are really great and exhaustive works and are, of course, a digest of all that is known on any subject treated. They are standard Orthodox volumes. They can be found in good public libraries, and they are on the shelves of many ministers' studies. The reader has but to consult one of these under the heads of the Old Testament books above mentioned to learn that most of them were not written by the authors assigned to them, that where their authenticity is assumed by tradition, generally nothing is known of the personal history of the author, that most of them are not original works, but are, on the other hand, compilations from pre-existing records. And especially this true of the older and more important of the books, that no one knows who wrote those pre-existing records, no one knows when they were written, no one knows who compiled them into the books which we now revere so highly, no one knows when the compilation was made. In short, no one knows anything about their origin except that it can be very easily shown that they were not composed by Moses and Joshua and Samuel and David, and the authors usually named. Orthodoxy itself has long since conceded this startling fact. Every minister who has studied the subject knows it, and one of the things which provokes the hostility of intelligent men toward the church is that the clergy will not tell congregations anything about it, but keep them under the impression that such a thing has never been heard of, and that the books were written by the very men whose names they bear, and that they received them from God. The books of the New Testament, which have no known authors, are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Acts, the epistles to the Ephesians, Colossians, 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy, Titus, Hebrews, the epistle of James, 2 Peter, 2 John, 3 John, Jude, and perhaps Revelation. Now, if you look at the work of Abelard Reuchlin, he portends to know who wrote all of these books, and they were all written by Romans, members of the royal Piso family, and he's able to lay down when they were written and by whom. So, obviously, that scholarship is a century later than this. The genuineness of Paul's epistles to the Ephesians and Colossians is doubted by Dr. Davidson, though the majority accept it. But this leaves 10 of Paul's epistles and the 1st of Peter, the 1st of John, and it may be Revelation as the only genuine writings in the New Testament. Professor Davidson says that the Gospel of Matthew, as we have it now, could not have been written by Matthew, that the present Gospel of Mark was not written by Mark, and that its author is unknown. That Luke did not write the Gospel now bearing his name, and of the Gospel of John, he says, its existence before 140 AD is incapable either of decisive or probable showing. The Johannine authorship has receded before the tide of modern criticism, and though this tide is arbitrary at times, it is here irresistible. No certain trace of the existence of the fourth gospel can be found till after Justin Martyr, after the middle of the 2nd century. Of course, if John were not written until 140 or 150 AD, the Apostle John could not have been its author, for he was dead long before that. Again, Professor Davidson says, if it be asked whether all the New Testament writings proceeded from the authors whose names they bear, criticism cannot reply in the affirmative. Textual criticism has been employed to discredit the true dates of the present Gospels, to make them earlier than they really were. And the most exaggerated descriptions have been given of the frequent transcriptions of the text and its great corruption in the 2nd century. The believers say the evidences of the late dates are corruptions of the 2nd century. But the evidence in favor of the authors traditionally assigned to the Gospels and some of the epistles is still uncertain. A wide gap intervenes between eyewitnesses of the apostles or apostolic men that wrote the sacred books and the earliest fathers who assert such authorship. The traditional bridge between them is a precarious one. The epistle to Titus and the 1st and 2nd epistles to Timothy, commonly known as the pastoral epistles, were not written by Paul. I have already referred to the doubts concerning Paul's epistles to the Ephesians and Colossians, and in fact, some of the more radical school assert that but 4 of the so-called Pauline epistles are genuine. And of course, the Roman origins hypothesis maintains that they were all fictional and made up by a combination of Arius, the son of Arius Piso, and Pliny the Younger, 2 blue-blooded Romans, very close to the Caesars. previous to the year 170 AD, nothing was heard of the second epistle of Peter, and it was not generally known till the close of the 3rd century. Dr. Westcott says that its canonicity cannot even now, on historical grounds, be pronounced certainly authentic, and the most he can say for it is that it is better supported than the Shepherd of Hermas or the Epistle of Barnabas, of which we now hear nothing. There has never been a time when the book of Revelation was not discarded by many persons competent to judge. The churches to which it was addressed, those in Asia, are the very ones which rejected it. It was not in the Bibles of Eastern Christians for more than 1,500 years and was incorporated into those Bibles less than 3 centuries ago. Dionysius said that many of the early Christians denounced it as being without sense or reason and as the forgery of Cerinthus. Dionysius himself did not believe it was written by John the Apostle. He did not know who did write it, although in another place he intimates that Cerinthus did so and forged John's name to it. Papias suggested that it might have been written by John the Presbyter. Caius said it was written by Cerinthus. So great was the hostility and contempt for it in the East that there is reason to believe that the bishops would not allow it to be read in the churches. In the Synod of Toledo, a Western church, in 671 AD, a special decree had to be passed affirming its authority, and so late as the 16th century, Beza, a friend of Luther and Calvin, conjectured that it was written by Mark. Even yet, the Pauline authority of the Epistle to the Hebrews and its right to a place in the Bible have been denied by Orthodox theologians. The genuine letters have the superscription, Paul, called to be an apostle, etc. This epistle has none. Originally, no one claimed it to have been written by Paul. Tertullian, in the early 3rd century, the Christian father, said it was written by Barnabas. In the Clermont manuscript, it is to this day called the Epistle of Barnabas. The Old Latin version does not contain it. It was added subsequently and then as an anonymous production. The early Latin fathers, with entire unanimity, ignore it and exclude it from the Bible. According to Origen, some said it was written by Clement of Rome, others by Luke. Origen himself